Good afternoon, everyone. It is good to be here. Forgive my tardiness. I'm still getting accustomed to the technology, but I appreciate you coming on. Blessings on you. Thank you for joining us, Apostle Roper, and all of you who are joining me today. I see Timothy Roberts coming in from Abaco, and it's good to have him. And I think one of these days I'm going to go live with him on Let Us Talk About Some Wonderful Things. But welcome to the Servant Leader Speaks Live, and today we're going to be talking about Lynden Pindling. There's a viral video, or video going viral, talking about Lynden and about it being his fault while we are not independent, and we could have asked for more. Some conversations have been a little demeaning regarding the work and the vision of Lynden. Some people have said, oh, we have fake independence or false independence. But guess what? We're going to talk about it today. In fact, I'm going to invite you to hit me up on WhatsApp, 423-2709, 423-2709, so you can do your comments, or on Facebook, because yes, Facebook. And then we are going to be able to talk and add your comments to the discussion. We're going to talk about faith, we're going to talk about Lynden, we're going to talk about independence, and what he did and what he could not do. And we are going to take your comments on WhatsApp or Facebook. The WhatsApp number, 423-2709, 423-2709, my Facebook page, you can see it there. Or you can send your comments. I'll try to read some of your comments on the discussion as we talk about it. Now let's have a word of prayer, and then we're going to get right into this discussion. Father, we thank you for this day as we speak about the Father of the nation. We pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable unto you, who is my strength and my Redeemer. Thank you for those who are joining us now. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, Dr. Donald McCartney, joining us from the United States. I think we're going to have a very good show. We're going to have a very good presentation today. While I want to do a little teaching, I would like your comments in regards to what it is we are getting ready to do. Talk about. Now, first I talked about the matter of a video or clipping of Lynden speaking and talking about the fact that we wanted internal self-governance. That is a video that's going around, and people thought to demean the fact that Lynden's fault why we don't have full independence. But what could have been done in 1973 or prior to 1973, from majority rule in 1967 leading up to independence? What could the father of the nation and those involved in the constitutional talks for independence could have asked for? Now, I'm looking at it, and I'm telling you a little bit more about constitutional monarchy. We spoke about that before on another show, but I will, for those who are joining us for the first time, I think we're going to talk about it a little bit more. First, coming out of majority rule, going into independence, what could our founders or those involved in the constitutional talk possibly ask for? Let me make a couple of points. Number one, we were coming out of colonialism, where most people got 4th grade education. You went to school until you were 14. You had a lot of people there who were former slaves, uneducated. You had a select group of students who were allowed to go to the government high school and who were able to get a full high school education. So most of the nation were maids, bellmans, hotel workers. You were fortunate if you worked for the government. But very few persons or elites, even black elites, had the opportunity to send their children to school. So the masses of people in the nation were not necessarily educated. Now you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the masses of people in the nation were not educated. So persuading the masses to move the nation forward with full independence, that means independence entirely from Britain, would have been a little tricky if you are trying to do that. The point is, they have known about Mother England, and while they wanted freedom and while they wanted relief from the level of mistreatment by their colonial bosses, I am sure that those persons who were attempting to negotiate independence were trying to do what they needed to do. That's Lynden and the group of persons in the government trying to bring independence had to negotiate. Now, what it is that they could negotiate and what it is they did negotiate. That was 46 years ago, more than 46 years ago, close to 50, anywhere between 47 and 50 years ago. So in 2019, for us to now blame Lynden and those who brought internal self-governance, that we are not completely free, I think it is not fair. Why I think it's not fair is because, as I discussed earlier, we had most of the population who were basically not educated to the full extent where we needed to be in terms of university educated persons who can be able to contribute to the nation. Now let's look at what they negotiated. Now first, as I said earlier, when we look at this independence, this constitution, this is called the Bahamas Independence Order. And I'm going to change my glasses so that I can read the smaller print. The Bahamas Independence Order is a statutory instrument of the British Parliament. It was made in February and June in terms of going before the Parliament, and it came into effect July 10th, 1973. This was a citation that brought about our internal self-governance. It revoked the 1963-1969 in the Constitution, and it established this Constitution. This Constitution gave us internal self-governance, and it gave us what we would consider constitutional monarchy. Now, you know, I'm teaching, but my teacher's online, so I am sure my teacher could correct me if I'm wrong, but I realized that constitutional monarchy was a very interesting form of a limited independence. Both Britain and the former colonies of the United Kingdom have this form of governance. Let me again quote what the form of constitutional monarchy is. It is a form of democratic government in which a monarch acts as a non-political head of state within the boundaries of a constitution, whether written or unwritten. While the monarch may hold formal reserved powers and government may officially take place in the monarch's name, they do not set public policy or choose political leaders. Mr. Vernon Bogdanar has defined constitutional monarchy as a sovereign who reigns but does not rule. And as we note, in the Bahamas, of course, the Governor General, who is appointed in regards to this constitution. Before that, we had a governor. Before 1973, we had a governor. But in this environment, the act of dissolving Parliament, giving assent to legislation, comes in the name of the Governor General, who represents the monarchy. Let me give you a couple of quotes from several articles in the Constitution. And I know some of you have joined me before in this regard, but I want to go ahead and just repeat these articles for the sake of this teaching. Article 1 of the Constitution says, "The Commonwealth of the Bahamas shall be a sovereign democratic state." That's this Constitution, the Bahamas Independence Order, 1973, states that the Commonwealth of the Bahamas shall be a sovereign democratic state. That's the first thing that this Constitution established for the Bahamas. Sovereignty and democracy. So constitutional monarchy, as we say, self-governance, internal self-governance, we have been given a level of freedom to dictate public policy, as I read earlier, and to choose our own political leaders. In 46 years ago, when Sir Lynden and those persons who were part of the Constitution committee that went to London determined this is what they were negotiating. I want to also talk about what that also means. So if you have your Constitution, page 34, you can follow me. The government, or the composition of the Parliament, says there shall be a Parliament of the Bahamas which shall consist of Her Majesty, a Senate, and a House of Assembly. That is what the government or the Parliament will consist of. Her Majesty's government and Her Majesty's opposition. Now, part of Her Majesty's opposition and Her Majesty's government was determined how we would run the country. They negotiated internal self-governance called constitutional monarchy. I'm going to be just a little emphatic because I wanted some people to understand when we are looking and we are pushing for freedom or sovereignty in any nation, 46 years ago or more than 46 years ago, those who looked to bring these things about were doing the best that they can. According to the Executive, Chapter 6 of the Constitution, Article 71 says, the executive authority of the Bahamas is invested in Her Majesty. Subject to the provision of this Constitution, the executive authority of the Bahamas may be exercised on behalf of Her Majesty by the Governor General, either directly or through officers subordinate to him. Nothing in this article shall prevent Parliament from conferring functions on persons or authority other than the Governor General. Article 72 says there shall be a cabinet which shall have the general direction and the control of the government of the Bahamas and shall be collectively responsible thereto to Parliament. The cabinet shall consist of Prime Minister and not less than 8 ministers, of whom one shall be the Attorney General, as may be appointed in accordance with the provision of Article 73. And so let's read Article 73. Whenever there shall be occasion for the appointment of a Prime Minister, the Governor General shall appoint as Prime Minister the member of the House of Assembly who is the leader of the party which commands the support of the majority of the members of the House. Article B says it appears to him that the party that does not have an undisputed leader in that House, or that no party commands the support of such a majority, the member of the House of Assembly who, in his judgment, is most likely to command the support of the majority of that Parliament, and who is willing to accept the office of Prime Minister. Which means if we don't have a party that has the majority, but there is 3 or 4 parties in the House, whoever can get the support of the majority of those persons will be appointed as the Prime Minister. Of course, the opposition also will be the person who commands the support of the majority of persons who are not members of the government. So what the Sir Lynden Pindling and the persons of the Constitutional Committee did is negotiated a form of internal self-governance so that we might be able to determine our own destiny. That was important because we were coming out of colonialism, post-slavery, and we needed a country that we could make our own determination. Now that is very interesting, and I'm excited that in those years ago we were children, but we have not lived in those areas of colonialism. By the time as we came into independence, I was about 7 years old, and many of us who now are adults in our mid-40s and 50s never lived in that. So think about it, the younger persons, the millennials as they call themselves, and younger children would not even know, couldn't even imagine what that means. But what they were able to negotiate was at least able to bring about a term a time of self-governance in which they could determine their destiny. I remember prior to, in 2000, between 1998 and 2000, speaking to Sir Lynden, I asked him that question. Why is it that we did not, or you did not, your government did not seek any kind of internal, of independence? Sir Lynden's explanation was because they had the franchise to govern the Bahamian people. Because they had the franchise to govern the Bahamian people, they were satisfied that they were going in the right direction. They said they had the franchise, they could have formed a central bank of the Bahamas, the College of the Bahamas at the time. They were able to build schools so that children can go to school all the way up to high school, which was important. The government of the day invested money during the time, the early days of independence, where they could have sent many persons off to university to get an education, to be lawyers, to be accountants. If we are going to determine our own destiny, this is Sir Lynden's responsibility at the time, they would have to educate the population. Now, mind you, you remember earlier in the broadcast I said that because we had a lot of persons not having sufficient education to be able to chart a new Bahamas, they had to get from the British what they could. So we cannot fault that, say, 46 years, almost 50 years ago, when they negotiated internal self-governance, that they were wrong. So Lynden did what he had to do. Now let me just reiterate a little bit, because I'm talking about the father of the nation, Sir Lynden Pindling. I love the man like my own father, because when we were children, we saw a person who was a visible symbol of what freedom we endured or we enjoyed as children. I was 7 years old when independence came about. I was only 1 year old when majority rule came about. So I never really experienced the level of mistreatment that had happened prior. So, but Sir Lynden Pindling, and if you look on my page earlier today, I posted several interviews with Sir Lynden Pindling and persons who talked about what Sir Lynden meant back then. When you are former slaves, when you are children of former slaves, when you've not had an education, when you need to make a better future for your children, you are going to look at the symbol that comes forward to do what needs to be done to free the Bahamian people. And Sir Lynden Pindling was what they called the Black Moses. He came forward and he did what needed to be done in conjunction with all of the persons who was part of the leadership of both the PLP and persons who wanted to see majority rule come to pass. I'm going to give you a revelation again, and I have to say it because this really authenticates what Sir Lynden Pindling was to the Bahamas. We must not try to diminish what he was to the country. A lot of people, and I'm sure he was not perfect, and I'm sure many things might have been done or people said he have done. We cannot diminish what he did. And I will say to you what I believe is the true work, or was the true work and vision of Sir Lynden. As I said in my Thursday's broadcast, when the Lord spoke to me in 1998, he said to me that in the 1930s and 40s and 50s, and if you read and you listen to the documentaries, some I've posted on my page, the cry of the Bahamian people was very strong. They were tired of being mistreated. They were tired of being taken advantage of. They were tired of being treated like second-class citizens. There were nowhere else for them to go. Many Bahamians went to the contract. They never came back. They found a better life in America. And even though there was some level of segregation, they found a way to live in America. But those persons living here, wanting to make life better for their children, for their grandchildren, they were looking for deliverance in their own country. So when the Bahamian people cry unto God and they says, give us our land, please, give us our country, make us free people in the land of our birth. What he said to me is, he raised up a man. And that man was Lynden Oscar Pindling. Lynden Oscar Pindling was 22 years old when he came from the United Kingdom as an attorney. He didn't choose the path as a very smart attorney to go in a direction of just seeking funds or seeking a career in law, because he could have done so. He decided to go in the direction of politics. He decided to go in a direction to free the Bahamian people. Now, when a man takes his entire life and says, this is what I'm going to do for my country, and there is a lot of people in this nation that is now taking that very step. We see people having left their job, but they're working towards where we must go in the nation. And I've seen it. They've put aside money, not that they don't need money to eat, but they've put it aside in order to do what is right. I think about Kendall Colbert in Grand Bahama. I think about Prescott, Smith. They could be doing other things. They could have been rich based on what it is they do, based on their talent. But Sir Lynden Pindling, back in that day, made a decision to go after freeing the Bahamian people. And as I says, the Lord raised him up. He didn't just raise up himself. He didn't just go after ambition. The Lord raised him up so that he could become a leader in this country. So what it is we are going to do, or what has to be done in order for us to move to the next level. 46 years ago or 52 years ago, where are we now? Let me read something that Kendall is saying. Kendall Colbert is saying 52 years later, and we are no better off, and you don't want nothing to change. My friends, we don't have real, let's see what he's saying. My friends, you're not real to lend this company if you don't want a system change. Now I'm not sure I read that well, it's kind of small. But listen here, I believe that Lynden Pindling did the best that he could. Now during his 25 years in office, what went down with his people and whatever else happened, he did what he could. That's my estimation. It was not for Lynden Pindling to bring us to full independence. That is the work of this generation. Because during the 25 years of the PLP, the fact is Sir Lynden Pindling made sure we get an education. He did everything he can to invest money to send Bahamian children to school. And if we're saying that, we'll be unfair. If we figure in 25 years, nothing was accomplished during the leadership of Sir Lynden Pindling. And please note, I'm not a PLP. But after Sir Lynden left office, 1992 to 2019, it was the leadership of the FNL and the PLP. Hubert Ingram, Perry Christie, 4 consecutive terms. We are now in the 5th term since Sir Lynden left office of the FNM government. None of them has actually made an attempt towards changing the system of the country's status. We are still constitutional monarchy. Now, where we go from here is another thing. The recommendation is that we go to full independence. We look at constitutional democracy and how do we be responsible for our very own executive management of the country. Now, I'm trying to get one or two of these quotes. I thank you for those who are listening from Grand Bahama. Let's look at where do we go from here. We must begin the discussion towards constitutional monarchy. Sir Lynden did what he can. We must do our part. And I do believe, based on the generation before us, those people who are making their contribution, that we must go towards constitutional monarchy. No, I'm sorry. We must go towards constitutional democracy. That's our work. Because if we are just going to go, my friend, to the WTO, when there is so much other things that can happen in the nation. And let me pinpoint and make a couple of points in regards to where we can go from here. I think what Kendall was trying to say is that where are we 52 years later? Nothing really has changed in that. In the system of constitutional monarchy, the oligarchy in this country continues to control the economics, continue to control the resources of the nation. The point of changing the system allows all persons in the nation to have the opportunity to go forward. So in order for us to get to a point where we can share the natural resources with all the people, where we can allow freedom of information, the level of accountability and transparency to happen in the nation, there has to be a change. I quite agree. There is no way for us to move forward unless we look at the change in the status of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. So, going forward, let's look at it. What do we do from here? Where do we go from here? What it is that our generation must do. I do think now that we have been educated, we have been made knowledgeable based on research, based on the reading, based on the education of ourselves, to make the change, make the recommendation to move to another form of government that will change the system. Now, I can't take your comments if you send in your comments, and I will read them. And you know, there is a lot, and someone is sending me a quote, and I'm going to read it because I do believe that all of these things have been said about Bahamians, whether we've been lulled to sleep, whether we are lazy, and somebody saying we're lazy and we are crooks. There is a lot of things that has to be done for us to move forward as a nation. A lot of Bahamians, maybe whatever we call them, and I don't like to perpetrate the fact that we are lazy or we are crooks, but those things has happened. There are people who are like that. How do we change that? How do we reconstruct the nation? Because that is where we must go. We have to find a way, out of all the positive people that are here in this country, that are speaking, that are sacrificing themselves in order to make this happen. How do we get there? We first have to obtain the franchise. And that means we must get to government. We must be in charge of our own destiny. We must be elected to Parliament. And unless we are elected to Parliament, we're not going to be able to make any changes. And that's why it's important that we call on men and women who are serious about the changes that needs to happen in the nation to unite. We are not going to make it happen just because we want to. So if we decide everybody's going to do their separate thing, we're never going to do it. I remember Lady Pindling, Dame Lady Pindling, said when we were celebrating the 50th year of majority rule, that what they did and how the people felt back then was so strong. They know what they were doing was for their children. And because they knew that, they united behind the PLP to make that happen. However, successive governments of both the PLP and the FNM has failed the Bahamian people in going forward based on what it is we want to accomplish, or what the founders intended for us to accomplish. So Lynden said they didn't accomplish the country that they wanted to. And I have to read the preamble of the Constitution because it states those values. If we do not continue to state those values as criteria for national leadership, criteria for governance, criteria as to how we should move forward in the nation, we will forget. And we cannot forget that the founders intended that we should create a nation where we are fair, where we are not lazy, where we are not crooks, where we are not greedy, where we are not serving our own selves instead of the Bahamian people. That was the point of the preamble of the Constitution. And so in our teaching going forward, we must teach that these values that are in the Constitution be paramount and foremost if we are going to change the nation. I'm going to say this and I'm going to wrap up. This is the preamble of the Constitution. This is with the founders' intent that has brought us this far and will take us much further if we do according to the preamble of the Constitution, if we live according to these values, if we put these principles and these principles as a primary part of how we move forward, how we govern the nation, and how we teach the nation. And we'll be finished right in a couple of minutes once we finish. It says, whereas the people of this family of islands, recognizing the preservation of their freedom, is guaranteed by a national commitment. The preservation of their freedom. I will read that again. Whereas the people of this family of islands, recognizing that the preservation of their freedom will be guaranteed by a national commitment. The freedom of the Bahamian people is guaranteed by a national commitment to self-discipline, which is paramount. If you cannot discipline yourself, if you cannot determine that what you do is important in terms of putting people before yourself, especially if you've been elected, if you're being paid from the public purse to do the people's business, you cannot just do your business first. Self-discipline. Industry. So we can't be lazy, Mr. Randy Morolson. I quite agree. We can't be rogue. We have to be industrious, loyal to country. We must have unity if we are going to accomplish what we need to. And we must have an abiding respect for Christian values and the rule of law. We have forgotten that. That is the reason why we're here. The system that we have inherited from the British, there is a possibility, and not just a possibility, the honor in the system, if we went along with this preamble, would have given us a better level of governance. But because people have walked away, because successive governments have walked away from this preamble, it means then whatever system, whatever honor, whatever integrity was in the Westminster system that we had inherited from Britain is almost negated because we have walked away from the values. Now know ye therefore, we the inheritors of and successors to this family of islands, recognizing the supremacy of God, believing in the fundamental rights and freedom of the individual. That's important, that we recognize the rights and freedom of the individual. Of course, you have a right to play your music. And I have a right that I don't want to hear your music. So everybody must have respect for each other as to what we do. People have a right to be a homosexual if they like. And I have a right to reject it if I want. So we must have respect. You have a right to accept, I have a right to reject. We must have respect for people. And this is why the preamble of the Constitution, when it says so, we must give everybody the right to do what they have to when it does not infringe on the rights of other people. That is very important. So let's get back to it. So we do hereby proclaim in solemn praise the establishment of a free, democratic, sovereign nation, founded on spiritual values, moral values, in which no man, woman, or child shall ever be slave or bondsman to anyone. We cannot go back to colonialism, whether by the oligarchy or the Chinese or any foreign direct investor. We cannot go back. Our labor cannot be exploited, and our lives cannot be frustrated by deprivation. So any person governing the Commonwealth of the Bahamas must take these values in account when governing the Bahamian people. So I agree with this generation that we must remove ourselves from under the executive management of Her Majesty's government. And we should be able to determine our own destiny with constitutional monarchy, with constitutional democracy. How we do that is going to be dependent on us. in terms of the system that we use, the system that we study. There's a lot of study going on at this moment. So let's go ahead and look at how we should change the system. If it's the only way that we are going to be able to get our natural resources in the hands or in the benefit of all the Bahamian people, how we're going to have opportunity for everyone, how we are going to develop these neighborhoods. I mean, it's a disgrace that Baintown and Grantstown, after 52 years of majority rule and 46 years of independence, that people still have outside toilets. In Angliston, we still have outside toilets. Why can't we make a difference with the wealth of this country to make sure that every single Bahamian is being taken care of? I appreciate your contributions. I could not see them very well, but as we go forward, we're going to take the views of persons so that persons in the country can see the benefit of moving away from what we've been given 46 years ago and going to a new kind of governance. We thank Sir Lynden as the father of the nation in bringing and driving with a passion to bring about majority rule and internal self-governance. It is now our work. It is our work in this generation in 2019 to take the country to the next level. You must believe in that. If you don't believe in that, then you want to stay where you are. I believe that we must do what we have to do to make sure we satisfy the next generation of Bahamians with good governance, with a system of governance that will allow them to live not only as free people, as prosperous people, and with good governance, with accountability, with the Freedom of Information Act, with the access to what the government is doing on your behalf. That's part of the rule of law. We have to know what the government is doing on our behalf. Well, you can go to our website, www.bcpparty.org. There's a lot of information how you can make contact, or you can email us, bahamasconstitutionparty@gmail.com. As I indicated before, our WhatsApp number, 423-2709. You can send us information. We'll be sure to put it online, our page. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Kendall. Thank you, Maria from Grand Bahama. Thank you, Dr. McCartney, Mr. Randy Marolson. Thank you, all of you who have joined us. It was a pleasure, Mr. Roll, Brian Roll. So it is wonderful just to have us joining, talking about the things that is necessary going forward. Before I go, I want to say happy birthday to Patricia Morley, W. Patricia Morley. Her birthday was July 10th. I'm kind of late, but nonetheless, happy birthday. She had her birthday with the country. And so blessings on you. I pray that the Lord bless and keep safe the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And again, I just want to say the phone has been interrupting our broadcast, but I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. We have to do what we have to do to get our country on the right track. There is a lot of wonderful people who will be part of that, and I believe that all of us in the will of God will do our best to make sure that we do have a beautiful Bahamas to leave for our children and our grandchildren. There's one more quote. I think I can put it in there before I go. Okay, I'm trying to read this one quote and then we're going to get out here. But nonetheless, I think, let me just read it. Okay, it says, "Sad, my friend, you need to think what you say. Imagine what you're saying unless we go to be trained by our former slave masters. We can't lead our country." Well, we don't need the training from our former slave masters, if I may respond. We need our own training. We need our own research and documentation in order to get where we're going. But nonetheless, this is it for today. I do thank you for joining me. You can WhatsApp me if you have to, 423-2709, or send an email to the Bahamas Constitution Party at gmail.com. We must find a new way to govern this country so that we may leave a better country for our children and our grandchildren. May God bless and keep safe the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.